Right, today I'm back on our Herreshoff 12.5 here, and I'm just about ready to cut off the forward end of the apron style keel because it's pretty deteriorated. And in order to do that, I'm going to actually cut it from the other side in a little bit of an unorthodox manner. And I have to have this plank a little bit out of the way. So I have to unfasten it and spring it out of the way like I've done on the other side. Maybe not quite as far, just so that I can not cut into it when I make that incision into this. So I've got to remove some of the screws here first. And first I've got to get some of the bottom paint out of the way. And the first thing I'm going to do actually is pick up a chisel, and I can see that there's a frame right in here, and this is the way I'm going to go about removing the paint. And I've got another one up in here. So I'll take the chisel and actually put it 90 degrees to the hull like this, put my hand behind it and scrape like that. It's probably the easiest way for me to do it because I can concentrate more pressure with it than I can with a paint scraper, and I'll remove the rest of the paint a little bit later. So at this point, I've exposed some of the putty here that covers the screw heads. Now there's a couple of screws in this plank right here into the frame, and there's a screw here and another one here. These go into the floor timber, so I've got to take this putty off now. That has been covered actually with polyester putty. That's Bondo actually on top of those screw heads. And this is a new plank. So when they put that in there, that screw head was kind of fresh, and the Bondo sticks to that bronze, unbelievable. It also sticks to the wood. It's great stuff actually for filling holes and sands off pretty good, but it's tricky to get out of there actually, much harder than like an oil-based bedding or oil-based compound or something like that. So we've got to go at it here with an awl and a hammer and just kind of bang in there, and you can see it doesn't just come flying out of there. Started off with an awl and it works okay, but that putty's hard to remove, and like I said, it's stuck to the screw head. So what happens with the awl is it actually comes in there and contacts the screw head and digs into the screw head and won't slide. So it's a little tricky removing that polyester putty with that awl. So I've switched over to this tool. Now this tool is designed to clean the screw slots out after you've exposed the head, and that's what I'm going to use it for. But first I'm going to use it to remove the putty. Now it's got some angles cut on there that allow it to slide along quite nicely when I bang it with a hammer. It's quite sharp and very hard steel, and it does a fantastic job. I finished that one up with just a couple of bangs, and now I'm going to move on to this one over here. And now that we've got the slots cleaned out, we can just take a screwdriver and remove the screws quite easily. Now there's two different size screws here. These are very small ones. They go up into the frame actually. And then there's a bigger one in here. It's in the floor timber. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually slide the screwdriver over to the edge of the slot so that when I rotate it, it kind of scrapes at the edge of the hole a little bit, so that cleans some of the putty out from the way of the head. That way I don't pull the head out and pull the putty out with it and chip at the planking. So I'm going to slide it over to the side, rotate it a little bit in both directions, and then slide it the other way, rotate it a little bit, and I've just scraped the putty out of the way and remove the screw without damaging the plank. So I've taken 4 screws out of here. 2 of them were in the frame itself and 2 of them were in the floor timber. Presumably that's all there is here. There was a plug in here, but I don't believe there's a screw underneath it. I'm going to actually find out when I start wiggling the plank whether or not I've got all the screws, and if I haven't, I'll know then. But I'm going to move down into this area, and I've got more screws here to take out, some in the floor timber again and some in the frame. I'd just like to show you what happens when you don't use that little trick that I showed you about sliding the screwdriver over and scraping at the side of the hole before you remove the screw head. The screw head will get stuck under the putty and the putty will chip the wood. And what happened right here is, you see that right there? It's lifted right up like that. Now it's no big loss because we're just going to stick a little glue under it and glue it back down. But if you want to avoid that, that little trick I showed you really works great. Now that we've got all the screws out of the hood end of this garboard plank here, we're going to actually remove some of the seam compound that's on top of the cotton, and then show you a little trick method of getting the cotton out of there as well before we actually spring the plank out. There'll be quite a bit of resistance to that springing with this cotton caulking in the way. So we're going to take this little reefing hook now. You can gaff the boat up pretty badly with one of these, because if you think you're just going to pull it along the seam like this and pull the seam compound out, what's going to happen is it's going to come out of the seam and run along the seam on the side of the seam and gaff the thing up awful. So what you have to do with one of these things, when you put it behind the seam compound, you want to make sure that when you pull it, you actually pull it out of the seam this way rather than along the seam. Otherwise you're going to have trouble. And I'll demonstrate that right here. So now we've removed that seam compound, and that worked out very nicely with that reefing hook, but you really have to keep in mind not to try to pull the hook along the seam when you're first starting, otherwise you will make a mess. I've pulled it out of the seam like that, and it's done a great job. Then I've gone on there and taken a little bit of residual compound off the edges of the seams, and now I'm ready to remove the cotton. Now I'm actually going to try to remove this cotton without using a tool. Sometimes it works out really well and sometimes not so well. And I'm going to twist it on the end. I'm going to grab the cotton, and it's kind of weak. If you pull on it, you'll separate it. But if I twist it like a piece of rope, I can usually get it to be strong enough so that I can get it to stop popping out. As it pops out, you can see it twisting as it untwisting as it pops out. So I'll just twist it up some more and keep pulling, like that. Now I'll show you what happens if I don't twist it. I'm going to go down to the garboard seam here and do exactly the same thing. Just grab onto that little bit of exposed cotton there, twist it a little bit and pull. I got a little bit of it out. I can twist it a little bit more, and it strengthens it, so I don't have to use a tool to pull on it. And that one worked out pretty well. Now if I want to just part it, as long as I don't twist it, and if I just allow the twist to come out of it and pull it, it just separates. And then we're going to pick up our reefing hook again and just clean the seams up a little bit before we spring this plank out. There really is nothing left in that one. There's very little left in this one. So that's a good thing, and I would say that it's ready to spring. I'm actually just going to take my hands and start wiggling that garboard plank until it comes loose. I'm going to put a little block behind it here. I'm going to pry it out with this chisel a little bit extra and slip a block behind it and hold it up out of our way so that when we make this incision, we won't cut into it with the saw.